This video is all about Peak Cavern. It's also known as the Devil's Arse. Please subscribe to my channel. Walk into the entrance. They have the cinema in the cave. Here is the tour times and the prices. It's not cheap. I think it's closed. It's closed. We got there a bit early. We had to wait. Go through here. Cool. We just got our tickets. Welcome to the Devil's Arse. The tour will start soon.
Yes, I'm afraid it's me again. You've got my other focus for an hour. Right. I can pop you down here. I'm going to tell you all about the entrance and what was going on down there in the station. We've got a cinema set up at the moment. That's what's going on here.
Here is the cinema.
Find a spot here a little while. So, go pop me thing, that's all. Now. Hello, welcome to the Devil's Mum. Are you agree? Now we go on to 3 days.
She showed us how they used to make ropes in the cave.
Victorian times, the name was changed to Peak Cavern. And we're also going to a third name, not quite as official. Home of the rope makers. This is true. Now we're going to carry out this little demonstration here because since 1642 right up until the later 1800s, they were supplying the local lead mining industry with ropes in this very cave entrance right here. 250 lead mines dotted in and around Castleton. You know of Speedwell, that was one of them there, that was still left, you can visit there. Underground, flooded mine. Great place. Don't go if you're claustrophobic though. Now, okay, there were 2,000 lead mines in and around Castleton, and they all needed ropes. So, the cave entrance here, the largest natural cavern entrance in the entire UK, 330 feet in length alone, was used to supply the mines with these ropes. Not only was it right in the middle of the mines, it's the perfect size and shape. You need to be under some sort of shelter or cover. We have that. The first 2/3 of the entrance, you've got this long, even, straight stretch. That's also needed. So it was ideal. No money to be spent on a separate shed or a building. So this is why it was used. It was the Duke of Devonshire. He said, okay, chaps, in you go. And as long as the mines are kept supplied, no rent to be paid at all. So rope makers built a whole village within the cave entrance here and lived here completely rent-free for hundreds of years. What we've got here, folks, are rope walks, or terraces, as they're called. And before that, it was just like a sloping mud riverbank, so they leveled off, cut down, leveled off, cut down. Then put together 14 little tiny stone dwellings. Now you can see one later on. We can't see from where we are at the moment because of the screen there. But we have one or two of them left. The little tiny stone houses. So I'll show you one just a moment. Just after I've laid out my strands here. Nearly done. I'm going to put together an 18-strand flat rope. And at some point I will need some scissors. I'll be operating a 19th century jack. If anybody fancies having a go at that. You're deliberating. You look enthusiastic.
No, I was looking at her.
Oh, are you enthusiastic?
No.
Sadly. Yeah, you have a bag.
It's not that bad.
Wait till you see what we've got coming later. You'll be fine.
Yeah, no, it's
Excellent.
excuse to get out hard work.
Fantastic. Here we go. Now, lay my stones out there, just not that there for later on. Okay. Yeah, I'll show you the house when we put the rope together. Now, what we had in here, several families of rope makers. This was passed down generation to generation to generation. So once they put the terraces in place and the housing and brought in all their workings, you know, the equipment, all laid out down here, they've moved in animals, mainly pigs. A few chickens flapping about, the odd goat rolling around, but mainly pigs. Down in the very far corner, you won't be able to see it from where you are, there's an entrance to a little tunnel that runs right along the back of this cliff face, and we call the entrance, that little tunnel, the swine hole. There was a main pigsty down in that corner. Many of the animals were just running around quite freely here on the rope walk. So what's going to happen? Droppings, dung, the stench everywhere. You're trudging in it as you're rolling out the ropes here. It smelled awful. In fact, they said you could smell this place long before you happened upon it, miles and miles away. Now this entrance here, it's north facing, entirely north facing. So you see the sun hitting the cliffs at the top, that's about as far as it gets. You don't see the sun from in here at all. It never ever shines inward, even at the very height of summer. So it's quite cool, even in the hot weather. As you walk up the pathway, you can feel it getting cooler and cooler and cooler and cooler like that. It's great in the hot weather, they're freezing when they get down there. So it was also very smoky. So you see on the ceiling here these darkened patches. All of that is just soot. Nothing but soot, because they had fires all over the place, out on the terraces. And they were for cooking on, for warmth, for light, for everything. And, this is quite nasty now, here's why they had so many pigs. Their fat was used in the rope making process. Fat was squeezed into cauldron-type pots and boiled on many of these fires. And candles were made from this. It's a substance called tallow. Lead miners used tallow candles, and so did rope makers. But in here, it's coat of strands of yarn before it was wrapped in, smothered in this greasy, smelly, nasty pig fat. Really distinct pig tallow. And you have then a waterproof rope used down the lead miners. So here's how to put this thing together, very briefly. This is how our material arrives now. Lovely big rolls from Chatham Dockyard, massive rope frame down there. And we get these round reels of flax like so. Back in the day, it would be sackfuls of bare hemp fibres taken from the stem of a plant you've heard of, cannabis sativa. God knows what they did with the leaves. Put them in clay pouch. Like the happy existence rope makers had. No, but the plant stems are bashed into fibres. These were transported north, dropped off down at the bottom there. There used to be another pathway coming into the cabin there. The one you've all walked up to get here was your out path, if you like. There used to be a second one coming in, and all the materials brought in were unloaded and dropped off. Now children, beginning at the age of 4, you'd have done this, had the job of spinning the fibre into yarn. At this stage we call it yarn. Now, once that's spun, it's stretched on wooden wheels, which you might just be able to make out through the fencing and the chairs right there. And then smoothed in the tallow. Then you can lay your strands between your jack here and a sledge, a modified cart, a miner's truck, and you can pop a rope together. Now, who fancies having a go?
Go.
A little bit too small.
Hey, Logan.
I'm afraid.
Too small.
They have to reach up here and pull it.
I wanted to do it, but I was too small.
What do I need to do?
Sorry?
What do I need to do?
Nothing just yet. Because first of all,
So my daddy did it instead.
equipment. There is a knack to this. Some cut it, you can pull it. However, as it is now, you can pull and really pull hard and it will not budge. So all you do is and twizzle it like so. And now, poof, just like that, comes apart. Okay. Right, so if you can grab the green handle right there, and just give that a couple of turns anti-clockwise.
Any more?
That's right, lovely. Next we take these items here, really, really simple. That's a top, this is a spinner or a looper. These are going to go down here. Really simple stuff. Now, bear with me. Everything's in place. Terrific. Okay, if you can grab the handle anti-clockwise and give it a good, real fast turn. Hold it there, but don't let go of the handle. Don't let go. That's lovely. Now we have 3 sets of twine. Next. Woo. Remember, folks, this is only a tiny demonstration piece. Okay, same direction, sir. Off you go. Hold it just there. That's wonderful. There we are. That's more what your lead mining rope would have looked like right there. Don't let go of the handle, sir, please. Thank you. It'll start to turn on its own. I'm going to put the ends together and just finish this off. Okay, on they go. Wrapped into place. Now this time, the opposite direction. Of course, not quite as quickly. Keep my fingers. If you go slightly faster, sir. That's better. That's good. So all right, we're going to tie these open together. How do you remember? A bit of colour, easy matching style. Keep going, sir. Great, you can pop that and take a seat. Thank you very much indeed. Right. So we'll just give it a bit of a stretch. Oh, the last thing to do now is to secure the end of the jack. If left alone, it will just unravel. No good. First we put the rope to sleep. Stand it up. Like so. My little rope trick here. Doesn't always do it. And hopefully, as long as I keep an eye on it, it'll stay there until we go to sleep. Just like so. That's done now. And next we take a noosing horn. Now, we make a little loop here. That not only secures the end, but makes it also useful. This is how it goes. It's known as a Marison loop. It's because a chap that invented it in this very cavern was a guy called Abraham Marison. They were one of the main rope-making families within the cavern. I need to unravel the ends now. The very last rope maker was also a Marison. Abraham's grandson, Bert, very last rope maker. When he retired in 1974, that's when all commercial rope making stopped within the cave. We just make these odd little bits and pieces now on tours. Sometimes do still get private orders. But Bert, remarkable fella he was. Only an 8-year-old boy when he started. 89 when he retired. They've been making ropes in this very cavern entrance here for 81 years. Isn't that remarkable? He lived to be nearly 99, and his grave is in the wall at the back of the cinema screen here. You seem a little bit perturbed by that. His ashes are in the wall, not the whole body. Thank goodness. Yes, this was requested. Passed in 1983. Okay. So now we have two little loops like so. And we just sort of push these over. Now my loops are untidy. I've not quite got the knack for this after all the years. But if the sledge is slightly off from the hooks there, you will get some loops longer than the others and you won't get it tied in, Harrison. Poor Bert will be turning in his grave back there. So we tighten the loop with the horn, give it a good wiggle and a push. This is a shocking one. It's terrible. But you get an idea. That shouldn't be dangling around like that. That's a Marison loop there. Okay, that will not come undone, left alone. And that's now complete. That's how a rope was put together for a miner centuries ago, folks. Bert down there made a rope in here as long as 8 miles. What about that? An 8-mile long rope within this very cavern entrance here. So I'm just going to wrap this up, folks. We'll take a quick look at the houses and then take a walk way down the cave itself. Okay. Some of it down there is huge. I hope you enjoy it. I really do. I'm assuming no one here's been before? No? Okay. You look perished, Noel. Are you all right? Sure.
That were a bit boring. I'm not gonna say much now, so you heard the tour guide.
You know, sort of you're on your feet a little bit, moving around a bit now, so it might not feel quite as bad. I'm going to put this away for later. Roll that up into place. And ta-da! So, if you'd like to step this way, folks. Now, I don't know if you can all see this. Down there, where the lamp is, that's where Bert's grave is. They can just make out that tiny plaque there in the wall. That's where he's in the wall, right there. So really, you've all been standing on top of him, actually. All been waiting there, right where he is. Overlooking the rope walks. What a fella. And this is indeed inside of a rope maker's cottage. Round the edge there, you'll see where the actual wall ends, and we've added onto it in later years. Okay. Now, it wouldn't have been a gravelly floor. No. It would have been straw and mud down in there. A bit of animal muck down in there as well. Tiny fire in the corner, possibly, but nothing more than a wooden bench and a little chair. Straw sacks and straw mattresses, and they would have just slept on these. Everyone squeezed and huddled in. Can you imagine about 8 people in there, all huddled in together? Little crude pot of tea and some straw on the floor. And an animal maybe, who knows? And this would have been a straw roof as well. Now the outside of it, oh, do take a look down in the road. Have a look at the house. Very briefly, folks, very briefly. Look at that room.
Stop the dog. Stop the dog.
You all right? Sorry. Okay, no, it's okay. All right. Here we are, right here.
Moving in here.
That was added on to only decades ago. It used to be our little ticket office before the kiosk here was built. But this is one of the actual rope makers' houses. We don't know who put them, but there are initials there on the wall. J.P. And here we've got some of the actual old rope making equipment. Just look at that. Falling to bits now, but absolutely beautiful. This now houses a bit of storage, our electric box, spiders that size with egg sacs hanging from the back of the cupboard there. It's lovely to see. But yep, there we are, some of the old equipment and in a real rope maker's house. So, you take a wander down the actual cavern. Thank you, Molly. Come on down, folks, come on down. You got this. On the wall there, another used to stand right there. You see the line in the wall, the inner wall, it's all clean there. That was gouged away for a lantern or candle. And you've got the outer wall blackened by the soot from all those fires there. It's where, just like the one out there, another lean-to with a roof. So one house stood right where you're standing now. Okay, folks, we've got quite a walk to go on. Come on through. It does drip quite a bit there, so I've just popped you back here. This is what I'm going to point out for you next. Part of the cavern's actual formation there. This is Flowstone. Still forming, really. You see this head here? Dragon's head, horse's head, serpent's head, who knows? His nose is running, look at that. Now after we've had some rainfall, the water dripping there is much, much heavier than this. But over time, any kind of rainwater, little acidic it is, coming in from the surface there, will nibble and erode and eat away at the stone, leaving the dissolved mineral behind. This is the bigger cousin of the stalactite, a flowstone formation. All the whitish colouring you can see is the mineral calcium carbonate. Quite pretty, isn't it? You like it? Looking down at it. This continues, these shapes will look very different in years from now. So you put it together with all the blackened parts of the soot, you've got this lovely black and white mottled pattern all over the roof there. Hidden by our stage with a tarpaulin roof on top. Look, this is brand new, it's only about a couple of years old. The concerts and things we have, the band are all over there. Looking outward, flashing lights everywhere, you can hear it in the village. The acoustics in here are phenomenal. Okay, we'll go a little further. This rock looks kind of random, doesn't it? It's still standing on its own. It's not really attached to anything else. It said it was loose. It was wedged way up in the cleft up here somewhere. And it came away and crushed a rope maker. We don't know if this happened for sure, but this side of the rock here is often seen a short, stocky man, the ghost of a rope maker. One of those that catches your eye. You're coming down here to open up in the morning and go, oh, there's someone standing there. You have a good look, there's nobody there at all. Could it be the rope maker? Could he still be under there? Who knows? Come on down, folks. Okay, a few steps here. Bloody radio now. That's better. Come on down, folks. Just picking up a stone or two for later on. Oops, there's it. I don't believe this. Fingers and thumbs or what? It's the pig fat. Come on down. Try again. Finally. That's better. Oh, well, never mind.
Broke it.
No, not at all.
Oh, it cracked.
I ought to maybe warn you all folks, I can be quite clumsy. I have autism, I can be often quite clumsy, but I'm not going to trip up down there, no way. Right, I'm going to point this thing out next of all. A wooden box. It's not a coffin. Right, it's not a trough either. Oh, it had straw in it all right, but this wasn't for animals to eat or bed down on. These were boats. This is an actual one used, but there would have been several of these. Okay, sometimes they use miners' carts for this. It looks like a coffin, certainly, okay? And they were built for one person to lay flat in them and go underground. So there is your similarity, okay? This is great. You haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, have you? Rope makers were early cave guides, and they would bring curious folks just like yourselves way down the cavern centuries ago. Now, there'd be wealthy people touring Derbyshire, and they heard about this curious underground village and would want to take a look. And later on, more your Victorian era, Peak Cavern was put on the list. It was added to one of the 7 wonders of the Peak. So we are one of them. The other 6, you may know of some of them. Chatsworth House is another one. Mamtor is another. In Buxton, there's a cavern known as Pool's Cavern. If you know that, that is another one of the wonders. So, Chatsworth House, stately home, no problem. Fine grounds and gardens, you went there for tea, oh yes. But in here, the stench and the smoke would put off many, many visitors. And if that didn't, something else did. Many people believed an underground tunnel led to hell. Hold that in mind for later on, by the way. You see, heaven was above, hell was below. So, now, like today, it cost a fortune to visit the place, which is only the reason wealthy did it. And it had to be quite adventurous as well. A lot of climbing, a lot of hanging on backs, a lot of wading through water had to be done, okay? It took 2 rope makers per person. And a little way down, a short pool of water had to be crossed, and that's where they would use these boats. Okay, this one is falling to pieces now, but yeah, they lined them with straw, laid the visitor within with a big fat candle like that, and the rope makers would clamber into the water and push the visitor through. You will see this area in just a short while. Right, folks, come on down. You got here on the roof there. Again, a beautiful pattern in the rock. This is a fossilised coral forest. It stretches right the way around there, all the way along here. Okay. And you'll feel the turning breeze if that young lady's quite cool, because here's where it really does drop in temperature. You're okay then, you know, I haven't felt it too much just yet. You're standing beneath an haven called the Bell House. This is the doorway into the cavern itself. Now, these were formed by upward spiralling water. And these little circle shapes here are just sort of mini havens within your larger one. That's a perfect circle. That's just circulating water going round and round, trying to get through the rock. We have never been a mine, never been mined at all. There's never been anything to extract down here. Nothing whatsoever. We're entirely natural. And all of the rock is, of course, limestone, round about 300 million years old. And at that time, we were all under a warm, shallow sea. So there you've got the coral forest there. Very ancient creatures, crinoids, trilobites. They had jawed-boned fish back then. Lots of fern and greenery. Very old amphibians. And they'd be going about their business in the water.
Logan.
So, in a nutshell, you see, if these creatures just died naturally, they'd sink to the bottom and over millions of years, all the remains would be compacted into layers and solidified, you see, and that's your limestone. Just crammed 500 million years into a couple of minutes. And it was glacial melt water that carved through the cavern and outward. So we called it an entrance, but it's really an exit. Are you all right there?
Yeah.
You've got the giggles?
No.
Yeah, sure. Yes, and I've got down here 1 or 2 crinoid fossils that you can hopefully see. These are tiny. They're not very big at all. Now, crinoid fossils could be enormous, 10 feet long, several inches thick. But these are very little ones here.
Stems.
Tiny crinoid. They are. Yeah, that's it. Little skeletal pieces of a crinoid stem. These creatures They look like plants. So they've got the nickname sea lilies, but they were animals. I believe there are some species still alive today in the Atlantic. And they were closely related to starfish. It's their closest relative. Starfish. Beautiful. Never even extract these from the cavern. This is the best place to see a few of them in the show cave. They're all over the cavern, really. In fact, if you look at some of the walls throughout Castleton, in the walls of the houses and things, you'll see a few of these little crinoid fossils. On their ends, they look like little circles. Now, we're going back to the subject of water.
So you know how you know, like you've seen my bottom like this. Oh, no, that I showed you.
And you'd hardly know there was anything down here at all. But we're known as an active cave today. It means we flood after heavy rainfall. We act as one huge drainage system. This is one of our many, many flood points, okay? Now this is why I pick up the rocks. I nearly trashed my radio in the process. I've picked the one with the loose clip, that's what I've gone and done there. There we are, rippling away quite nicely. But it's absolutely silent and crystal clear. Beautiful. Now what you're standing on here, you've got this gorgeous sort of sandy, kind of muddy silt type stuff. And when we're flooding from this point here, it drags that through. So the water's quite brown. Now, you'd also hear a lot of activity because it really does come crashing and barreling through from beneath this rock when we're flooding. All of this area fills and the water spills right over where you're standing now. Little flood would only be around your knees. A medium one would be around your chest to waist. A large one, now that can fill this entire passageway right the way to the top of this rock and out and even creeping up the steps you walked down earlier. No matter what size the flood, it's when all this water is draining back away that we get the good bit. We can't see it, it's tucked under here. There's a natural siphon, a tight natural drainage hole in the rock, a bit like a deep plug hole in a very deep bath. And when this is sucking away the last little bit of flood water, along with pockets of air, the noise this makes is absolutely brilliant. It's loud, it can be heard well into the entrance, and it sounds like extreme flatulence. Begins like a drum roll, really. It starts off like the introduction to EastEnders. It goes a little bit like so. Then it makes a really plugging type noise. And then it goes absolutely raving mad, blowing off all over the place. And if you've not already guessed it, folks, this is the main reason we're called the Devil's Arse. We have a cave that blows off. If you remember, the name does date right back to the year 1086, the 11th century. Peveril Castle, that was the first part of it. The first part was Norman. There was a Saxon addition later on. When the first bit of the castle was built in 1086, it was documented as the castle on Devil's Rump. Then you get the hole, then you get the sound, and there you get the name. Okay, now then, oh dear. I was thinking of. Right, here's the tricky bit. We call it lumbago walk because of the toll it takes on your lower back. Good job, okay. The taller you are, the worse it is. Okay, so please take your time and mind your heads. Come on through.
Can't reach the highest point. Yeah, I'm still
Not going to be here long.
I'm just actually trying.
Yeah,
No.
I'm not even joking, I was actually stood up.
Yeah, I know. We can do that.
Just. You're about this. Your hair is just flicking against the rock right there. That's remarkable.
I'm very much in the gym.
Oh no, you have no people so not good.
Yeah, make it down like that.
Now this is going to make a bit of a splash. Now this is deceptively deep here. a bit of a plop. We call this little pond the Inner Styx. And this is the area where those boats would have gone through, folks. That was the water level centuries back. It used to be much deeper than this. Even when I first started, I remember this pond being deeper than it is now. So one rope maker would clamber into the water to help pull the boat through should it get stuck. It often did. With the terrified visitor laid within. The other rope maker would push the boat behind and underneath there, folks. That was the only way to get any further into the cavern. Until 1842, when Queen Victoria popped down. Oh yeah, she made 2 visits actually. She really enjoyed herself. This is when they changed the name to Peak Cavern. You couldn't say arse in front of the Queen, no. And neither were they going to shove her on her back in a mucky wooden boat full of straw through there. So a bypass tunnel was blasted through. Here we are. We call it Victoria's Passage. And this, folks, is the only man-made, oh yes, the only man-made part of the cavern. I hope you'll like what's through the other side.
Is it headspace?
You want to bet? Right then. How about that? Is there headspace? Oh yes, there's headspace, all right. 60 feet of it, something. Fantastic. Come on in, folks. You can have a good stretch in here. One of Britain's largest natural chambers, the Great Cave. Roughly 90 feet in length, 150 feet in width there, and one about 400 feet around in this chamber right here. So here's where the boats emerge. That's it. It's even lower on this side than it is through the other side. Those 2 wooden posts right there, those are the remains of a winch like a winding winch. That would help pull the boat through if it did get stuck down there, okay? And the visitors were helped out into here. There used to be a little sheet of water running across this path here, and this is where a visitor often had a piggyback from the rope maker. Not a very dignified experience. You see in the wall there now, the cavern is covered in this. That one's even dated. Whoever ES was, you could just make out, it says 1790 something right there. We've got 1 or 2 of these. It is, look, 1798, isn't it? Yeah, my eyesight's going as well as everything else. Oh, yeah, the cavern is covered in them. We've got 1 or 2 others dated, 1790 something. There's who's that J belong to there? But many visitors would etch their name or an initial in the rock wherever they've been. There are more of them over there. We've got a real graffiti wall further down, but we are losing that one, unfortunately. 1790. Pretty sure it does say an 8, doesn't it? Yeah, there we go. Well, anyone wouldn't have seen very much of this. So when you consider, folks, that this was all naturally formed, this was just swirling and spiralling water. Now this is where most of our significance lies, folks, within our size and our history here. We're a biggie, we are huge. Now we're beneath Peveril Castle. In this chamber here, there's a hole. Sometimes the area could break through to the surface, the spiraling water would break through. We had a hole in here. I say had. It's been blocked over at the top for many years, but the hole can still be seen today. There it is. Nothing more than a hole. Now, it was said in the castle's very early days, any prisoners held were dropped from the surface and they would land in here through that opening right there. Use this chamber essentially as their dungeon. It used to form like an actual chute, a shaft that reached Peveril Castle there. We don't know if this happened for sure. It's a possibility more than a probability. Okay, come on in a little further, dogs. Now you've got 2 banks in here, loose mud and rock, swooshed over to either side over time, leaving a nice clear pathway here right down the middle. And when we flood, we still get a bit of a river coming over this path, sometimes washing the smaller boulders down into Victoria's there. Now, this bank here, an awful lot took place in here. There's a pathway that runs to a secret tunnel. Here's where it begins. We call it the children's pathway. Along the bank it goes, round the bend there, over here, and to the top. And there is a secret tunnel. There it is. You can walk completely right in there. Now it goes inward and angles and emerges through onto the other side. And the ropemaker's kiddies would sneak down with pick fat candles and run up the path in the dark and wait for a tour through the other side. And this is something that really did happen. Now, while you're looking in that direction, folks, if you note those markings there on the top, those dark scuff sort of scorch marks, well, that's actually what they are, scorch marks. For somebody like the Queen coming through here, a few torches and lanterns and candles weren't enough. They made a real display here by actually setting off gunpowder toward the wall. There's more of them on that side there. There they are. There are more distinctive on that wall. Okay. The booms that went off in here were terrific. They were deafening. There's no way I understood it, no chance. But the place filled with smoke as well. But this was a little bit of a theatre show set off. This is how they would have illuminated a chamber for the real VIP. Okay, this is what I'm going to do now. We've got one step in the middle there. Come on up, folks. It's better to face inward. Now, it won't be pitch dark, all right? The lighting Victoria's will remain on. So if you sorry, Sid, that's just glaring me a little bit there. So if you don't like the dark, just look down in that direction. To get an idea, the better idea of the cavern without lighting, it's better to face inward. Okay, here we go. That's it. You'll get the odd glow from the emergency lights there. Now, if there is a power cut, you see, they come on immediately, so no one's ever stranded in the darkness down here. They used to be. Definitely used to be. You can see how the cavern feels very, very different. Friendly, though. Okay, we'll carry on. Thank you. Come on through first. If we leave you there too long, you might get a tad wet, so we'll pop you at the steps. Anywhere around here, folks, you know. Light day, it will get lighter than that in very dry weather. Not much though, but it never stops entirely. We call this Roger Rain's house. Roger Rain's, and all that really means is the underground house of the rain. Underground rain. It's really a water source known as Lady Spring, and that's flowing from Cavedale. That's where we are now. We're in the new Cavedale, still about 400 underground. Sheep tend to run around in that water quite a lot, so please don't try and drink it, whatever you do. It is crystal clear, it's beautiful, but just because of the sheep at the moment, not a good idea. So there's a part of that water there, you'll see flowing in front of that opening at the top. Now when it's very heavy during flooding seasons and heavy rainfall, it comes down with a real whoosh. You'd all be drenched about now. It forms a curtain of water, a heavy curtain of water across the bottom of those steps. And on tours, that's where people tend to run quickly underneath it before it runs up. It's great fun. I come out with wet hair and everything. It's fabulous. Now, at the top there we go. That secret tunnel, the children's pathway and the little tunnel. This is where it emerges onto this side. And the children would stand on the edge there, on that very ledge with the little candles. That's a sheer drop there, folks. And we're talking about children as young as 4, 5, 6 years of age sometimes. It's remarkable. From up there, you get a good view of this area here, and they'd wait for a tour coming through, and the children would begin singing. They were trying to entertain wealthy visitors, but they didn't get very far, no. Much later on, a real choir, more the 1800s, a real choir would go up there, fancy candelabras, and they could sing beautifully. It really was a spectacle, and people enjoyed it. But in earlier days, when Ropemakers' children did this, all the children really achieved was terrifying the visitors absolutely senseless. They couldn't sing at all. It was a surprise, so they startled everybody. They made this hideous wailing and screeching noise. Now, we know this took place because it was something that was well documented and written about. And if anyone ran around this horrible chamber, you'd think, oh my goodness, what's that? But if anyone saw the children, you're going to get one of these. You see, they were looking down on you, and with the little candles beneath their chins, oh dear, all you'd have seen were these little slightly illuminated faces bobbing around in this dark gallery up there. Terrified them absolutely stupid. They thought they'd met with ghouls and ghosts in hell itself. One of the writers that described this experience said it added to the dread and horror of the situation. That was the word used, situation. But, yeah, quite something in its day. Really quite something, okay. There we have it, folks. The Ropemakers' children and the orchestral gallery. There we go. Let's go a little bit further, see the last part. So all of this mass here on your right as we walk in was a rock fall occurred thousands of years ago. Nothing major's moved since. Floodwater washes through mud, silt and smaller boulders. And we even have a quarry just 2 miles away, Pindale Quarry. And when they blast once on a working weekday, all the way down here you feel a bit of a shudder. Well, it can be slippery down here, folks. Please take care. Alright, I'm just going to pop to the corner because I've got a light switch over here. That's right. They're getting closer as well. I think this quarry blasting. Something's going to give, but no, absolutely solid. But they are getting a little closer and closer to us, so we don't know what's going to happen then. They use it for cements and works and building and all that kind of thing. Now, folks, okay, yep. Got a few minutes left here before we take a nice steady stroll back through. And this is the end of the show cave, okay? And you can see why we go no further than this. Excuse me, folks. That's better. Right. It's a steep and very muddy slope, and very much of a drop from here onward. So we've come into the cavern approximately a quarter-mile inward, a little under a quarter-mile in. The cavern continues for well over 12 miles beyond this point here. I can show you a map when we leave later on. So around that bend at the bottom, walks a little way, you meet the underground river. Then it splits up into all different directions. It's a real underground labyrinth. Tunnels, passageways, going in all different directions. Some chambers are tiny, what we call the squeezers. You may have seen, if you've ever seen cavers on a documentary, where they're really, elbows like that trying to get through. We have areas like that. And yes, the cavers do come in and use them. We also have huge areas. In fact, I'll put the light on for you now. The bottom. See how dark it is down there. We actually have the biggest chamber in the entire country, way, way, way down there. It's kind of a strange shape. It begins narrow at the bottom and widens at the top. One part of it is taller than the other part. Now from base to the tallest part, this chamber measures 464 feet. You get a good idea, the cliffs outside are about 300, so nearly double them. And you've got the biggest chamber down there. So big, known as Titan. Titan, vast. Takes hours on a caving trip to reach it. Very, very complicated. The remarkable thing about Titan is a chamber that huge, way down there, was only first found just 23 years ago. Isn't that sensational? Here's where we also link up underground with Speedwell. As they go through the lead mine, it joins well into natural passageway. That's how the two caverns physically interlink. So you go to Speedwell on the road. If you take the car, 5 minutes, if that. If you walk, it's about 15, maybe 20 minutes at the most. On a caving trip from one to the other, it's a couple of hours, because of course you're wiggling in all different directions, wading chest deep in water sometimes, water that's about 4 degrees, 4 or 5 degrees, very cold water. And unfortunately you can't see it, folks, but that's what we have beyond this point right here. It's huge, very, very complex too. Okay, now going back to a little bit of folklore here. This area is known as Pluto's dining room. And again, back into the dark. This was an area that was occupied by outlaws centuries ago. Now this is before rope-making days. This is 13, 14, maybe even 1500s. Beggars, thieves, even murderers would hide out down here. People that would club people to death and rob them on Willis Pass, you know. Nasty pieces of work. And they had a leader, a chap called Cock Laurel. And here's where the myth comes in. It was said that this nasty piece of work invited the devil to join them and dine. And down in the darkness there, at the bottom of what we call the devil's staircase, a pair of red glowing eyes could be seen. So the devil scrambled up, he joined them, they caroused and ate and drank. It said cannibalism happened right here, and the devil enjoyed himself. So he thanked Cock Laurel and all his cronies and shot back off down into hell, leaving behind him one huge... And that's just a bit more of the folklore surrounding the name Devil's Bum. Okay, and off he went. The part about the outlaws is true. There we are. One more peek, folks. There you go. Now I do have to turn that back out as we leave later on. This is brand new, this light, by the way. It's been here a matter of weeks. A matter of weeks. And this is on a pulley, so that when we're flooding, we can hold the light out of the water. So the main reason we don't go any further than this, you can hopefully hear the river Styx down there. Have a listen, folks. Can you hear that? It's flowing away quite nicely. You can hear it doing that, no problem. That river still floods all the way up here, and we know it's going to flood when it goes silent. That's because it's filled the tunnel it's going through. There's nowhere for the excess water to go, so it will come all the way up this area, right here. Centuries ago, it would flood and hit the ceiling. And this is why you don't see a lot in the way of stalactite growth. But since the water hasn't hit that height, it gets about here. The river gets about here. They have started forming. You can't see a cavern and not see a stalactite. Get ready. There we are. In the corner, right there. That's hundreds of years old, that little stalactite. It could be up to 1,000 years old, isn't it cute? These teeny ones, they really are everywhere down here. Tiny stalactites. But yeah, anything miniature, we tend to put that baby-like attribute to, but it could be nearly 1,000 years old. Incredible. So there we are, folks, the Peak Speedwell system. Right.
What's that thing for there?
The slide is an old TV prop that was put there in 1989, 1990. They were filming one of the Narnia stories, and Tom Baker went down there as his character with 2 children. They're sliding down an underground mud bank, and they meet with different adventures, and I don't know the story at all. They call it the Silver Chair. The BBC, the Silver Chair. I believe Tom Baker's character was called Puddleglum. And yes, he came down here decades earlier as the Doctor. An episode of Doctor Who was filmed down here. And here we are, our main graffiti wall right here. Not much of it can be made out now, unfortunately. We are losing a lot of this, it's a shame that you can see scratchings, etchings, lettering, initials, carvings, all over this wall, just there. Riddled with absolutely. Okay, folks, it is indeed time. I was going to get back to the surface there. We've got a map and photographs of Titan in the entrance. Do take a look at these. Oh, sorry, folks.
That's the end of the tour. Time to walk back. It's very expensive for what it is.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that.
It's all right.
You took a bit of an explore there. Thank you so much for that.
You're up, Paul.
Ciao ragazzi, benvenuti a tutti.
You already brought something today.
Pencil.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe.